Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto becomes a Saiyan for Chunin exams. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Namikaze09 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Naruto, the Saiyan Maelstrom. Forest of Death. We find a 15-year-old Naruto Uzumaki Namik is fighting a snake-like Chunin while his two teammates watch on in fear of being killed. Said ninja gets the upper hand in the fight and then the Chunin traps Naruto in a tongue-like grip and lifts up his shirt to see the Reaper death seal. Bukuku. So when your anger is roused, the Kyuubi releases some of its chakra when you're in a death-like situation. Interesting, but you have been in my way for too long, so he does 5 hand seals and gathers ethereal purple-like flames across his fingers. Gaju Fuin, 5-pronged seal. Then slams his hand into the seal. Ah! Naruto cried out as his tenant's chakra receded back into the seal and his eyes returned to their normal blue. Now beggin', said the Chunin as he throws Naruto aside. Sasuke gets out of his state of shock but is too late because the Chunin stretches his neck out, bites Sasuke in the neck and releases him to show a seal-like mark in the form of 3 tomos. Ah! Sasuke cried out in pure pain as his body felt like it was on fire. Sakura snaps out of it and screeches, "What did you do to Sasuke-kun?" She yelled, not even worried about her other teammate who fell into the abyss of the forest. "I just left him a little gift that will help him avenge his clan," said the Chunin as he unleashed a small amount of murderous intent on the weakling. "Who are you?" asked Sakura with fear in her voice. "I'm Orochimaru of the Sannin," said the now revealed Orochimaru. "What do you want with Sasuke-kun?" screamed the pink harpy. "That is of no concern for you, my dear. I must leave now, but I will say this: Sasuke will come to me for power and nothing will stop him, Kukuku," he said as he vanished into the darkness. So naturally Sakura just shrugs off whatever he said and takes her Sasuke-kun away to somewhere safe, abandoning her whiskered teammate. One day later, same area. An unconscious Naruto groans and slowly sits up. "Ugh, where am I?" asked the groggy blonde who he sits up and runs everything that happened within his head and then bolts right up remembering what happened. "Crap, where did everyone go?" said Naruto. He looks around, seeing no around and comes to one conclusion and suddenly he went from shocked to angry to pissed the hell off in 5 seconds. "I don't believe it, those fuckers left me." He roared and white electricity courses around his body. A few minutes later he hunches over and clutches his stomach in pain and falls to his knees. What's wrong with me? Why does it feel like my stomach is gonna burst open?" he asked himself and cries out as the pain grows to untold levels. That Kusa-ninja did something to me, Okami, the pain," he said as he cries out even louder and rolls over onto his back and rips his jacket open, revealing the Shiki Fuin that was along with the Gaju Fuin glowing red and unknown to his. Some other seals formed on his body. Mindscape. Ayubi no Kitsune's eyes snap open as she felt a powerful surge of energy emit from her vessel, and then she goes from shock to grinning like a maniac. Finally. "Orochimaru, you arrogant fool, you fucked up big time. At long last, Naruto-kun, you'll become your old self once again," she said with excitement in her voice. Outside. To say Naruto was in pain would be an understatement. His body felt like it was tearing itself apart from the inside out and his blood felt like it was on fire. He also felt flashbacks go throughout his mindscape, which consisted of a lone figure floating into the night sky with what appeared to be a monkey-like tail swaying back and forth while gazing into the moon and then transformed into what appeared to be a giant ape and roared amongst the night while firing what appeared to be red energy from its mouth. The flashbacks ended and the area around Naruto started to tremble, the trees started to shake and some of the wildlife scattered. Naruto could feel his heartbeat increase, beads of sweat fell from his face and it was difficult for him to breathe. When the pain reached its peak, Naruto's eyes glowed red as did his mouth and his headband flew off while he let out a loud and primal roar that echoed throughout the forest. Cracks started to form around his body until he exploded into an orb of crimson energy that sent a shockwave throughout the forest, like how Broly transformed into his legendary Super Saiyan form. A few minutes later, the orb of energy slowly dies down and reveals a new but different Naruto who was on one knee while steam rose around his body. His height used to be 5'0", now he shot up to 5'7", and his entire body changed from little to no muscle to a body of a fighter, but not like a weightlifter, but a body built for a martial artist. He wore an open silver coat that stopped below his waist and had pockets, and on the back of it was the kanji dragon Maelstrom. The jacket had a black line going down the sleeves, and he wore a black muscle shirt with dark blue pants, a silver belt, black fingerless gloves with metal plates on the top and dark gray boots. All in all, he's wearing an outfit similar to the one future Trunks wears, only altered a little. His hair also changed. It was no longer blonde, but his hair was now jet black, wild, and spiky and stopped to his shoulder blades, and had jaw-length bangs on each side of his head, Minato's hairstyle only it's black. Also attached to the belt was a series of small scrolls. His face no longer had the whisker marks on them, and his facial appearance was more sharp and feral, and he also had a pair of canines jutting from his upper lip. What was also shocking was that swaying behind him was a dark brown monkey-like tail. The former blonde's eyes snapped open, revealing a pair of electric blue eyes that radiated with power. Naruto slowly rose to his feet and looked around the area for a bit. Unknown to him, a panther was slowly stalking him from the tree branches and growling as it crouches down and ready to take down its new prey. A few seconds later it leapt at Naruto's back, intending on ripping him apart and feasting on his flesh, but as it got close enough something very shocking happened. The new version of Naruto smacked the beast aside with a simple backhand and sent the beast flying like a rocket into the sky and did so without even looking. Naruto quietly inspected his hands and arms and clenched and unclenched them simultaneously for a while and then slowly cracks his knuckles and his neck a couple of times. He then got in a fighting stance and started to unleash a series of punches that looked like a blur and then stopped to do the same with his feet and stopped afterwards. Next he walks over to a large and thick tree that seemed to be strong. He rears his fist back, pauses for a few seconds, and then punches it. The results were the tree falling over and crashing into the ground, making the area shake from his actions. A small smile slowly forms on his face until it becomes a full-blown grin revealing his canines, and a chuckle escapes from his lips. After that, a full-blown laugh escapes from his mouth and said laugh echoes throughout the forest. After a few seconds, he calmed down and stretches his arms out. "Man, oh man, it feels great to be my old self," he said, but then scowls and clenches his fists. "Those fucking elders and civilians are gonna pay for what they did to me," he snarled out but then grinned. "Heh, I can't wait to see the look on the old monkeys and Iroenu's face when they see me. Now all I have to do is find my bastard teammates." He then closed his eyes to concentrate. There they are, and it seems the spoiled brat got himself a gift from the snake as well as have some company with them. "Well, I guess it's time to deal with the trash," Naruto said to himself and simply vanished. 10 minutes later at the battle site. Naruto arrives just in time to watch from the treetops and see his teammate 9 and the Sound team battling a bloodthirsty Sasuke, while Sakura sits there crying at the scene and tries to hug Sasuke to stop him, but the prick backhands her away while looking at the others with an insane and bloodthirsty grin. Naruto silently watches Sasuke annihilate Zaku and then pulls onto his arms until a sickening snap echoed throughout the forest. Everyone was horrified at the scene except for Naruto, who grinned at the sight. "Well, as fun as it is to see the team break limbs like a crazed lunatic, I think it's time I end this before he turns on the others," he says to himself and vanishes once again. Before Sasuke could do anything else, a grey boot slammed into the side of the Uchiha's head and sends him flying into a tree, which left an imprint of the boy and said Uchiha slid down the tree knocked out while the marks on his body recede. Everyone's eyes widened in shock when they saw the unknown stranger appear out of nowhere and knock him out. Niji Hyuga was more than shocked, for he had his Byakugan active but had to turn his eyes away and deactivate his Dojutsu. What was that? It wasn't chakra, it was something else. It was fluctuating uncontrollably like a wildfire. He and everyone else then looked at his eyes for a brief moment, was shocked to see his electric blue eyes were as cold as ice and were like that of a veteran warrior that has been through the 9 levels of hell and back. Naruto then looked back at the Sound team and said in a voice so cold that would make the devil himself cringe in fear, "If you want to live to see the next sunrise, Sound Nin, I suggest you leave your heaven scroll right here and go before I finish what the brat started and kill you," he said dangerously and lets out a bit of killing intent. Osu was ready to piss himself, since not even Orochimaru has that kind of look in his eyes, so he did the smart thing and threw the scroll to Naruto, got his team and left. Sighing, he turned around to the other teams and frowns. "What are you looking at?" said Naruto as he turned to Sakura and narrowed his eyes at her. Sakura comes out of her stupor and stomps her way up to Naruto and screams, "You baka, how dare you do that to my Sasuke?" She never got the chance to finish because, like Sasuke, she too was punched into a tree but left an imprint of her forehead while darkness took over her vision. "Shut the hell up, you trash," the former blonde said with a scowl as he picks her and Sasuke up by their collars and looks at the others. "Whatever you have to say can wait, I'm not in the mood to answer anything at the moment, so I'll see you all at the tower," he said and then speeds off into the trees heading for the tower top speed. At the tower, Naruto drops them on the floor and afterwards he looks at the 2 scrolls and creates a cage bunshin and has him and his clone throw the 2 scrolls into the air when they started to smoke from being unraveled, and then poof. Out came Iruka, who sees a black-haired Naruto with his 2 unconscious teammates, and the man's eyes widened. "Naruto, what in the world? Why is your hair black and what's with the tail?" he asked while the former blonde shrugs. I'd rather not explain right now, Ruka-sensei, but more importantly, can you show us our rooms? We need some time to rest since a lot of things happened within the forest. Asked a pissed off Naruto. This confused Iruka for a while, but then the man smiles. Sure, Naruto, follow me. He said as he led him to the rooms while carrying the two nobodies to the rooms. Within the tower stood the genins that made it past the second exam. In the tower were the elders, some of the clan heads like Inoichi Yamanaka, Choza Akimichi, Shikaku Nara, Suma Inyazuka, and her daughter Hana Inyazuka, Hyuga Hiashi, and then there's Sarutobi Hiruzen, the third Hokage and the proctors Anko Mitarashi. A8 Gekko, and behind the genins stood their senseis, as well as Sound Sensei and Whirlpool Sensei, who was a woman with vibrant red hair that reached her mid-back and violet-gray eyes. Her name is Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. She was here with her apprentice daughter Natsume Uzumaki Namikaze, who was also in the exam. She was here to see her daughter pass through this part of the exam, and said miniature version of Kushina was stealing quick glances at the black-haired ninja with electric blue eyes and had a look of curiosity and interest on her face. Some of the genin looked worse for wear, some were perfectly fine, some others looked like shit. But they were here and they weren't gonna give up now that they gotten this far. While Hiruzen was doing his speech, Naruto looks around to see the competition, and the only strong ones out of all of them was Gaara, Rock Lee, and the redhead. His gaze instantly stops on the red-haired girl who seemed to be his age. She had blue eyes that were similar to his, but she had some blonde tips in her hair. She was wearing a navy blue long-sleeved shirt with blue shinobi pants, blue shinobi sandals with a katana strapped to her right hip, with her headband marked for Uzugakure on her forehead. She also had the body of a real kunoichi, meaning she trained her ass off to get stronger, and in his opinion she was quite beautiful. When their gazes met at the same time, a small grin formed on his face which revealed his canines, and he winks at her, which made Natsume blush and look the other way. Kushina saw this and turned her gaze to the black-haired teenage Saiyan and wondered just who he was and why her daughter blushed when she saw him. So after that little fiasco, Hiruzen finished his speech and realized that Kabuto wasn't there anymore, and then the man spoke up. Sorry to say, but we have an extra spot open for another fight. Does anyone wish to volunteer? Hiruzen asked. That was when Naruto raised his hand up, getting the man's attention, and he along with Kakashi and Kurenai's eyes widened when they saw Naruto. Said old man was smirking inwardly, as was Kakashi, while Kurenai remained stumped when she saw the black-haired teenager, and for some reason he looked familiar. Very well then. Hiruzen said while the other genin were wondering who this black-haired ninja was. Skipping to Naruto's match. Everyone looked at the screen and the next match was Kiba Inyazuka. P.S. Naruto Uzumaki. What? Was the thought that went through Kushina's and Natsume's head as they saw the name and they looked around for the so-called blonde. Finally, it's my turn. I was about to die of sheer boredom in watching these so-called fights. Naruto said with sarcasm in his voice. For those that didn't know about Naruto's transformation, their eyes bugged out of their heads. Kakashi on the other hand was inwardly grinning like a madman. Kurenai, you better pray that Naruto is feeling merciful, otherwise Kiba's gonna get beaten near an inch of his life if not crippled. He though. Meanwhile, the three elders were sweating bullets and wondered how he broke the seals that were placed on him. On the balcony, right side. Natsume looked at the teenager that was her brother and she turned to her mother. "Ha-san, what's going on? If he's Naruto Nai-san, why does he look different and why didn't you live with us when we left the village?" Natsume asked, and then her eyes bugged out when she saw Naruto hover into the air and land on the arena floor with his hands in his pockets, which made everyone else blink in shock as they saw the transformed dead lass do that. Said female Uzumaki saw how handsome he was and blushed even more, wondering why she felt like she had butterflies on her stomach or why her heartbeat increased. Kushina on the other hand had a far-off look in her eyes, looked back at her daughter. "Musume, daughter, the reason why he never lived with us is because I was told he died during the day you two were born." Kushina answered as she narrowed her eyes at Danzo. "But from what I see I was lied to," she replied darkly as she leaked killing intent at Danzo, who had a bead of sweat drip down his brow. As Naruto and Kiba stood in the arena floor, the Inyazuka started to smirk arrogantly. "I don't know where you got your new look from, but don't think it'll change anything, dope. You're still the loser of our group and always will be." He taunted, hoping to get the blonde to explode and lose his cool, only for the black-haired Saiyan to nonchalantly digging his pinky into his ear, which caused a tick mark to form on the Inyazuka's face. "Hey loser, don't ignore me," he shouted. Naruto removed his pinky from his ear, looked at it for a few seconds, and then stared back at Kiba. He inwardly grinned and decided to pull a Kakashi. "Did you say something, runt?" he asked in a bored tone, which caused most of those watching either sweat drop or face fall to the ground. In Kakashi's mind, a chibi version of himself was waving a flag that said favorite student on it and making a victory sign. Hiruzen sweat dropped and wondered if it was a good idea to have Kakashi train Naruto when he was younger. Kakashi, my hip rival, you have passed your cool and hip attitude onto one of your students. The spandex wearing man said, and Kakashi decided to do what Naruto did. Did you say something, guy? He asked, which caused said man to burst into anime tears and say he will surpass his cool and hip attitude, and when his clone Rock Lee stated that he would help Guy in being even cooler than Kakashi, they did their man hug, which caused a sunset along with waves to appear in the background. Kushina instantly covered her daughter's eyes and her brow twitched. Trust me when I say that I'm protecting your sanity, Musume. Kushina stated. Naruto's brow twitched and a vein throbbed on his head, so he decided to stop their fiasco. He aimed his left hand in their direction, and an orb of what appeared to be fire formed in the palm of his hand and fired it at the two. An explosion occurred which caused the entire room to shake a little, and when the smoke cleared, they saw Lee and Guy separate with pale looks on their faces, and there was a smoking sizzling crater near where the two hugged. They looked back at Naruto, who glared at them coldly. Do that again and I won't miss. He said in a cold and dangerous tone which sent shivers down everyone's spine including Gaara's, and for some reason Shukaku was trembling in fear and muttering to Gaara to stay away from that ninja. Back in the arena. Kiba snaps out of his stupor and once again smirks arrogantly. Nice trick, loser, too bad it won't help you beat me. Naruto on the other hand had a dull and bored expression on his face, so he yawned, revealing his canine teeth, and then cracked his neck. Proctor, can you please begin the match so that I can put this runt in his place which is under my foot? He asked lazily, which infuriated Kiba at being called a runt. Hey-8 looks at them and then the Hokage, who nods. Okay then, cough Naruto Uzumaki vs Kiba Inuzuka, are you both ready? He asked and got nods from both of them. Alright, then Hajime. He called out and leapt away. Akamaru, stand back buddy. This won't take long. Kiba stated while Akamaru looked back at his master and then Naruto and whimpered when he looked into the blonde's eyes. They were the eyes of a true alpha, one that has no equal, and instantly sprints back to the stairs and to where Tsume and Hana were watching and hid behind Kuromaru. If you are done boasting then let's get this show on the road. I have better things to do than to play with the runt of the litter. He said mockingly. Kiba snarled and flexed his hands. We'll see who the runt is when I mop the floor with you. He said and clapped his hands together. Shikyaku no Jutsu, 4 legs technique. Kiba suddenly got on all fours and his appearance became more animal-like. His nails lengthen into claws, his eyes become wilder, and his canines lengthen a little more. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this and reached into his weapons pouch, which made Kiba get on the defensive and wondered what type of weapon Naruto was gonna pull out, only to see the blonde pull out a small novel book and place it in front of his face, and the cover said Path of the Lone Spartan. What the? Hey loser, what's with the book? Kiba asked. Isn't it obvious, Fleabag? I'm reading it in order to find out what happens in the next chapter. But don't let it get to you. With your pathetic attacks it wouldn't matter if I was reading, sleeping, or making out with your hot mom or sister up there. He said, which made said female Inuzuka's blush in embarrassment while a tick mark formed on Kiba's face and he charges at the blonde. I'm gonna rip you apart, you clanless orphan. He roared and leaps into the air with his hand reared back and slashes at his face, but Naruto simply backhands him into the pavement while still reading the book. Too slow, runt. Naruto said, still reading the book. Kiba skidded and charged again and tried to swipe at Naruto again, only for the teenage Saiyan to simply move to the side. You're gonna have to do better than that. He taunted while the Inuzuka tried to roundhouse kick him, but Naruto simply grabbed his ankle without even looking and flings him into the concrete wall, making the mud leave an imprint as he slid down groaning. Everyone remained stumped as they saw the new and improved Naruto simply fling Kiba into the wall like he was nothing. Asuma decided to speak up. Kakashi, what the hell did you teach that kid? The man asked. Kakashi looked at Asuma and blinked a few times. What? You mean what he's doing right now? Sorry Asuma, but that's classified info only the Hokage can reveal, and Naruto if he feels like it. He said while the man frowns. However, I do feel sorry for whoever has to face him when he fights again. He said and saw most of the genin pale, even Gaara looked unnerved by Naruto's power display. Kiba was now panting hard while Naruto simply put his book away and cracked his neck. Are you done already, runt? I expected more from a future clan head. He taunted. Guess I have no other choice but to get my hands dirty now. He said while cracking his knuckles. Kiba on the other hand snarls and pulls out a food pill and eats it, rejuvenating his strength. I'm done playing dope. Now you'll pay for humiliating me. He pulls 4 smoke bombs out of his pouch and throws them into the ground, causing an explosion of smoke to appear and surround Naruto. Ha. What now, loser? You can't fight me if you can't see me. The Inuzuka taunted while Naruto simply smiled. You're right on one thing. I can't see you, but. Naruto suddenly vanished and the next thing everyone heard was the sound of fists and feet pounding into flesh and the sound of someone crying out in pain. Some of the Jounin and clan heads cringed when they heard the beating within the smoke until it died down, and the smoke cleared revealing Naruto standing over an unconscious and beaten to a pulp Kiba who was twitching a few times and groaning. "I guess you were all bark and no bite. A real piece of trash just like the Uchiha. Hey Proctor, are you gonna call the match or what?" Naruto asked the stumped Proctor who got out of his shock and ignored the glare he got from the prick. "The winner is Naruto Uzumaki," Hayate announced while Naruto smirks. He then sets his gaze on Kushina and Natsume, smiles and winks at them both, which makes them both blush and find the ceiling very interesting. Anko, who was watching the new Naruto, turned to Kurenai and started talking. "Nai-chan, do you have any idea how the Uzumaki Gaki became this hot, sexy hunk of a man?" asked Anko while examining his body from a distance. Kurenai was just looking at him with dinner plate wide eyes with her jaw wide open. It's him, stuttered Kurenai with a bit of a hopefulness in her voice. Anko looked at her with a questioning gaze. "What do you mean, Nai-chan?" As she looked at her best friend to see her turn to face her, and what she saw shocked her, she saw tears brimming her eyes with a big smile on her face. "Anko, that's the same man who saved me back then. The one I told you about, but I never thought he was Naruto Uzumaki," she said as she kept looking at him, but he turned to her and flashed a small grin at her, and with his attention on her with that grin of his made her face glow red and look away. Anko was now beyond shocked as this was the same man. "He's the one Nai-chan always talked about," she thought. Flashback. Anko was just on her way to her favorite dango stand after completing another mission until she saw Kurenai with a face that looked like she was crying, so she rushed over to see her. "Nai-chan, what happened?" "What's wrong?" said a worried Anko with worry in her voice. Kurenai looked up to her small smile and said, "I'm fine, Anko, I just had a bad run-in on the way back from the village," she told her best friend. Now Anko knew something happened, so being herself she sat beside her with an arm around Kurenai. She asked, "Come on Nai-chan, tell me what happened, please." She begged with the dreaded puppy dog eyes no jutsu. Kurenai caved in after seeing that face, and she went on explaining what happened. Flashback within a flashback. Kurenai was just on her way back from doing a field mission to attain her Jounin status. She was very happy to have got it done without failure, but all good things must come to an end. As she was just leaving Earth Country border to Fire Country, she was ambushed by a squad of the Wagakure Anbu. "Well, looky here guys, we have a leaf tree hugger in our territory and it's a pretty woman. Why don't we have some fun with her before we take her back to the village?" asked a lecherous boar mask Anbu, with others answer with them inching closer to her. Now Kurenai was scared. She didn't know how to handle this, so she did the only thing that could come to mind, and that was to run. Had not one of the Anbu say something made her freeze. "Don't even think about it," girlie said, a hawk mask Anbu with a kunai to her throat. She couldn't move. She watched as the squad had already ripped of her Chunin vest and bandages that covered her body. Now all that was left was a red lace bra and red panties. Her eyes were brimming with tears due to the fact that she was about to be violated, and she closed her eyes, waiting for the pain, but it never came. She opened her eyes to see the Anbu that was about to rape her was being held in the air by his face by a shadowy figure whose face was covered by a hood and was struggling to get out. He suddenly started to cry out in pain due to the fact that his skull was slowly being crushed by the leaf Kunoichi's savior. The other Anbu were too scared to move or retaliate because they trembled in fear as the sounds of his skull slowly cracked. Said Anbu's mask shattered and blood started to seep out of his head and down his neck. An agonizing wail escaped from the man's mouth as his skull started to pop open and suddenly squelch. Blood, bone, and brain matter shot out everywhere due to the fact that the hooded figure's hand was closed into a fist and was smeared with his victim's blood. The now headless Anbu's body fell down like a stone, and the others started to slowly back away as they looked into the man's cold slitted electric blue eyes. Why you're the boar masked Anbu said in fear, only for him and his comrades to be vaporized by a wave of red energy that dissipated and left a smoking 20-foot wide trail. "Enjoy your one-way trip to the 9th level of hell, you trash," the man said in a cold and dark voice, and then slowly turned his head to see a half-naked Kurenai who was trembling in fear as he walked towards her. Please don't hurt me," she begged as she tried to cover herself up with her arms while tears fell from her face. Her savior's eyes softened and he knelt down to her eye level. He reached out and merely wiped her tears away, surprising her at his actions. His hands started to glow light blue and an outline of the energy formed around her body until a new version of her Chunin outfit materialized around her body. "No need to fret, I'm an ally of the Sandaime Hokage," he said and scooped Kurenai in his arms, carrying her bridal style, which caused her to squeak in surprise and blushed when she caught a glimpse of his handsome face and feral appearance. He started to slowly hover up in the air, and when she saw, she reacted by wrapping her arms around his neck tightly and hugging her body close to his, making him chuckle. "Don't worry, I won't drop you," he insisted, and she looked back at him in shock, wondering how he was floating in thin air, but before she could ask she screamed out in surprise as they took off into the air and towards Konoha. A few minutes later, he slowly landed onto the ground in front of the large gates of Konoha and gently set a baffled Kurenai down on her feet. "Here we are. By the way, I never got your name," the hooded male asked. Kurenai snapped out of her stupor and smiled thankfully at the man. "Kurenai Yuhi, and thanks again for saving me," she said, getting a nod in return. "You're welcome. Besides, I couldn't live with myself if I allowed those swine to defile someone as beautiful as yourself," he commented, which made her blush, and that was when he took her hand in his and kissed her knuckles, making her whole face glow scarlet. "Until we meet again, Haim." And with that vanished in a swirl of wind. End of the flashback within a flashback. Anko just looked at her with her jaw on the ground. "Nai-chan, you are so lucky. Do you have any idea who you met?" Squealed Anko as Kurenai looked at her with a confused expression. "What are you talking about, Anko? Do you know who he is?" she asked while Anko pulled out a bingo book with a picture of the boy she saw and her eyes widened at the info. "Name N.A. Alias. The Maelstrom Dragon. Rank, S bordering SS flea on sight. Hair. Wears a hood but from the strands seems to be black. Eyes. Electric blue with pupils that become slits when pissed off. Bounty. 500 million. Information. This man is wanted in Earth Country for taking out an army of shinobi that was heading to Fire Country with an unknown but powerful technique that left a crater that was the size of a village hare and no one survived. It was stated that he assisted the rebel faction in Kiri in the Bloodline Purge and single-handedly defeated the Yonde Mizukage and is seen as a hero. Wanted. In Earth Country and Rice Country, dead or alive. To say Kurenai was shocked was to say Jiraiya had a respect for women, but when she looked at Anko, who was now starry-eyed, Karina's sweat dropped. Flashback end. Anko looked at the man before her to see him looking at her and Kurenai before glaring back at the elders with unadulterated hatred. She thanked Kami she wasn't the one who is on his hit list right now. She looked to see all the fights have went on and watched Natsume easily defeat Hinata Hyuga with only Taijutsu and Rock Lee defeated Choji. The next match surprised everyone else. Sabaku no Gaara. P.S. Naruto Uzumaki. The elders smirked, thinking that the demon brat would be defeated by the sand-using psychopath who now appeared in the arena via Sand Shunshin. Naruto, who had his arms folded, silently floated into the air and once again landed into the arena with a blank expression on his face, setting his gaze on the red-haired Jinchuriki. Gaara, on the other hand, was slowly releasing murderous intent on Naruto, and as it increased, everyone in the room was on edge. Naruto smirked and closed his eyes for a few seconds, but then they shot open and he unleashed a blast of his own murderous intent on Gaara, whose intent and bloodlust died down and made the sand user's eyes widen in surprise, and for some reason, he saw the image of a nine-tailed fox snarling at him with saliva dripping from its teeth. Naruto saw the expression on Gaara's face and chuckled in a way that scared everyone, and a smile formed on his face, revealing his canines. "Don't try to intimidate me, you desert raccoon. You may be strong, Gaara of the desert, but you should know better than to intimidate a fox, especially when it outranks you by 8 tails," he said darkly while a red flaming aura formed around his body. "Proctor, start the match so that I can put this mindless beast in his place." After Hade announced the match to begin, he leapt back while Naruto unfolded his arms and his Kai aura flared around his body like wildfire and the entire building started to rumble from the power behind it. The floor around Naruto started crack and debris rose around him. Whoa. I can't believe Naruto is causing the tower to tremble. Choji cried out while some of the other genin were having trouble standing on their feet. A few seconds later, the aura around Naruto dissipated and replacing was red electricity that shot around his body simultaneously. Said Saiyan shinobi was chuckling quietly as the electricity coursed around his body. Gaara, on the other hand, still looked surprised and stunned, especially when Shukaku was telling him to run away and not face this monster or he would die. "Mother is afraid you. Why does she fear you so, Uzumaki?" he asked quietly while Naruto smirked. "Because Gaara, your mother knows that I have the power to destroy you both and end your existence in this world," he said, and watched sand shot out of the gourd and sway around violently and saw the crazed look on Gaara's face. "No, my existence will not be decided by you. I will have your blood, Uzumaki," he roared out as a wave of sand hovered over him and slammed into the Saiyan, causing the arena to shake. "No. Sachi and Ikki." Both Kushina and Natsume cried out in their minds as they saw no sign of him in the sand-covered area. Gaara, on the other hand, grinned maniacally, thinking he crushed Naruto in his sand. "What are you grinning about, you bloodthirsty raccoon?" said a voice behind the redhead, whose eyes widened. He turned around only to see a gloved hand aimed at his face and Naruto, who looked impassive until a feral grin appeared on his face. An invisible force hits him directly in the head and sends him flying backwards and hitting the wall hard, creating a crater and hitting the ground hard. Everyone gawked when they saw this and were wondering how they did that. Sasuke was seething due to the fact that the Deadlast had the power to do that, and when he tried to use his Sharingan to copy the move, he seethed because he couldn't copy it. Gaara groaned in pain and struggled to get up. Naruto chuckles and rears an open palm back for a few minutes and then thrusts it forward, another invisible force slams into Gaara and pushed him deeper into the crater. Naruto did this again and cracks started to spread out. Everyone watched as Naruto did this a few more times until he clenches his fist, rears it back, and swings it forward with enough force that it causes an explosion and rubble collapses over Gaara. Naruto remains like this with his fist extended but then stand up fully. Did he win? Lee asked Guy, who shook his head. No, not yet. Naruto is merely toying with that Chunin ninja right now. Guy replied in a serious tone. That was when sand exploded out of the rubble and Gaara was on his feet and there appeared to be cracks on his face and seemed to be chipping off. Naruto raised a brow at this. Interesting, you encased your body in a dense armor made of sand to lessen the damage. Naruto stated as the armor regenerated. If you hadn't done that then you'd have a couple of broken bones right now. Gaara snarled and fired 3 tendrils made of sand at the blonde who vanished and appeared to the left. He tried again only for Naruto to leap back 3 times and vanish once again as the tendrils smashed into the wall. Naruto grinned and started charging towards Gaara, who extended his hands outwards, increasing the sand speed and velocity. Naruto instantly moved to the left as the sand went through the afterimage and reared his fist back. He saw his sand form into a wall in front of Gaara, but he grins which confused Temari and Kankuro siblings until he swung at the armor, but what happened surprised them and their sensei. Naruto's fist smashed through the wall of sand and his struck a shocked Gaara into the jaw, causing sand user to stumble back in surprise, while Naruto tore through the sand like paper and started to unleash a series of punches and kicks onto Gaara. This is insane, how did he manage to break through Gaara's ultimate defense with only raw strength? Temari asked in disbelief and then cringed when Naruto performed a wicked uppercut that sent Gaara into the air and he hit the ceiling hard. He started to fall down only for his body to hunch over and spit up saliva. Naruto then bypassed over him and delivered a vicious kick to his back and sent him crashing into the ground while he floated down with his arms folded. When the smoke clears, Gaara's armor is seen cracked and peeling off while he groaned in pain. I don't believe it, he's actually hurting Gaara. Kakuro stated. How disappointing. I expected you to be tougher than this, Tanuki. Naruto stated in a disappointed tone. Gaara snarled and flung more sand at Naruto, who simply vanished and slammed his knee into Gaara's ribs, causing a few of them to break and him to gasp in pain and then gets head-butted hard in the skull. Gaara was sent flying back but was jerked back due to the fact that Naruto had a grip on his sash. A yellow orb formed in his other hand and fired it, causing a blazing explosion to occur. Gaara screamed out in pain from the attack only for Naruto to grab his face and slammed him into the ground, head first. He then lifts him up into the air with his hand around his throat. Surrender. Was all Naruto said. Gaara groaned and glared at Naruto with all the anger he could muster and attempted to summon his sand off the ground only for a fist to enter his gut, causing his eyes to bug out and cough up blood, and Naruto tightened his grip, making it difficult to breathe. Don't be stupid. I could have killed you a long time ago, you fool, and the only thing you had in your arsenal was your sand. I'm not even trying right now, so this battle would be pointless. Surrender or I'll destroy you and your roommate. He said as he held his palm out and red Kai slowly formed in his hand with black electricity coursing around it. Gaara saw the look in his eyes and could tell Naruto really was going to kill him, and for the first time in his life he felt fear. I surrender. He wheezed out. Naruto smirks and drops him on the ground while he coughs up blood. Smart choice. Oh, and one more thing. You attack any ninja in this village and you will regret it. He said coldly while Hade announced him the winner. End. Chapter 2. Council and Explanation. After the preliminaries were over, Naruto was currently making his way out the building until he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned his head to see Kakashi, smiling and smirks. What's up, Inunai-san? Kakashi on the other hand chuckles at the name since Naruto called him that when he was younger. Oh, not much though, I have to say you did an excellent job in the prelims. That was when his expression turned serious. That aside, the Sandaime has informed me to let you know that he's calling his top ninja, as well as the clan heads, civilians, and elders into a council meeting, and I think it involves you and your transformation, he quoted. I see. Well, but first I have a few things I need to take care of. Naruto replied and got a nod from Kakashi and then vanished. 1 hour later at the council meeting. At the council meeting everyone was anxious to know what this was about, but some already knew but kept that hidden from everyone else. As they were talking, some civilians were shouting. What has Sandaime-sama called us here for? We got better things to do than this. Yelled Kuja Asawager, owner of several shops within Konoha. As the civilians were about to agree, the door opened up to see the Hokage with 3 cloaked figures walking behind him. When the clan heads and other elite shinobi saw them, they smirked and knew this was gonna be fun. As the Hokage took a seat, the 3 figures stayed behind the Hokage until a snobbish civilian had to go and speak. "Sandame-sama, what have you called us all here for? And who are those 3?" yelled another rather fat civilian, but then he and the other civilians froze up when Hiruzen unleashed a burst of Kai into the room that made them tremble in fear. "Let's get one thing straight, civilian, I am the Hokage of this village. I can easily remove you and anyone else from this council with a snap of my fingers, so do me a favor and shut up," he roared, surprising everyone on the room. Now before we even get started, he did a Torah hand sign. The room flashed for a minute with a lock sound. The civilians looked around questionably before the Hokage started speaking. "I've put up a silencing barrier lock within this room, cause today everything that gets said in here stays in here, do you hear me?" he said as he glares down everyone who nodded. Afterwards, he turned his head to 2 of the 3 figures and nodded to them. They nodded back and lifted up their cloaks to reveal Kushina and Natsume. When the civilians saw them, they were shocked to see Konoha's Red Death, but then a pink-haired harpy started shouting, "What is this whore doing here? She was supposed to have been gone." She was silenced from killing intent being released by the 3rd cloaked figure, as well as Kakashi and the clan heads, and decided to shut up. Kushina and her daughter Natsume are here to finish the Chunin exams, and then they were going to head back to their home country, but something came up which she will explain to you," said Hiruzen, who narrowed his eyes and watched the reactions from the civilians and elders to hear daughter, and he could see them plotting in their eyes. Kushina, who was staring at them, spoke up. "Sandame-sama is right, there was a problem during the preliminaries that I'd like to address to you. Someone that looked like my late husband Minato was in the prelims of the Chunin exams, and with the difference being his hair color." She then started to radiate killing intent on everyone, who started to tremble. "And what caught my attention was his name is Naruto Uzumaki's firstborn son. Care to explain this to me?" she yelled at the council. The pink banshee named Yusakaruno glared at her. "Watch what you say in here, you bitch. We are the honorable council, and if you ever raise your voice to us again, you'll pay for it. Besides, that thing you call your son is a monster in disguise and should have been killed when it was." She was suddenly nailed by a massive killing intent that emitted from Kushina and the other ninja and clan heads and started to whimper in fear. Kushina grabbed the hilt of her blade and was about to draw it and kill the harpy until the 3rd cloaked figure placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't soak her filthy blood on your blade, Kushina," the calm and masculine voice said, and got a nod from her. Danzo was thinking of a way to change it, so he spoke. "Kushina, we do not know what you are talking about, but before we discuss this, who is that man?" he asked as he pointed to the taller of the 2, who just looked at him for a minute before Danzo felt a shiver go down his spine as the man grabbed the cloak and removed it to reveal Naruto Uzumaki, and he was pissed. The civilian council was confused as to who this man was, that is until they saw his eyes and were scared out of their wits. "Hello, civilians. Did you all miss me?" Naruto asked with a dark and evil grin on his face, which was similar to a predator's when it corners its prey. One stupid civilian shouted, "You? What are you doing here, demon?" He screamed until his head exploded into blood and brain matter, shocking the ninja in the room and scaring the civilians and elders due to the fact that Naruto merely flicked his wrist in the now dead civilian's direction. Bastard shouldn't have broken the law, but then again, after today the civilians and elders of this council will not be around to see the next sunrise, he said in a way that made them tremble in fear. "I'm here because the old man sent a friend of the family to inform me of this meeting and have me, Miss Kushina and her lovely daughter Natsume to join this meeting," he said as he placed a hand on Kushina and Natsume's shoulder, who had tints of pink on their faces. Tsume, who was eyeing him, finally started talking. "Okay, Naruto, I need to ask what happened at the arena. It was like you changed into a completely different person." She asked the question that almost everyone wanted to know, and Kushina and Natsume looked at him expectantly, as were the jonin that saw the change. Kakashi, on the other hand, was smirking under his mask. Naruto took a deep breath. "The change you saw was the cause from my sealed-up bloodline that has been locked away for years, ever since I was little," he explained, while leaking killing intent on the civilian council and elders. "What do you mean sealed up? Who sealed it away?" she asked, wondering what he had against the civilians and elders, only for Homura to interrupt. "Do not listen to this demon. That transformation was caused by his tainted blood and should be," he shouted, only to be on the receiving end of killing intent so potent that it made Kyuubi's pale in comparison. Everyone looked to see Naruto surrounded in a red energy that was cracking up the floor. "Be silent, you trash. You call me a demon, but the actions you and your kin have committed over the years make even the lowest demon look like a saint. You care only about yourselves, and anyone who gets in your way suffers for it, with the Uchiha clan being an example, since you ordered Itachi Uchiha to murder his entire clan, including the ones who were innocent and didn't know about the coup their former leader was plotting minus his brother." Naruto snarled out, which caused the clan heads and ninja to direct their kai at the three. The Sandaime was gonna find a way to keep the innocent spared, but you three went behind his back and ordered the death every member, including the newborn children and civilians. He spat, and now Hiruzen was directing kai on them. They what? Tsume screamed and stood up ready to tear them apart since her best friend Mikoto was killed on that day, and Kushina also focused her kai on them. "Any last words before I send you all to the 9th level of hell?" Naruto said as his energy flared across the office. "Brute." Danzo screamed out, expecting his men to aid as while he escaped only for no one to show up. Naruto chuckled darkly and focused his predatory gaze on Danzo. "Oh, they won't be coming to help you fools. During the time the old man called the meeting, I paid a little visit to your so-called disbanded organization's base, and now it's nothing more than a smoldering crater caused by yours truly," he said, and now they were scared while Naruto raised his hand in their direction. "And now this is where we say goodbye," he said, and the last thing they saw was a flash of red energy and were reduced to nothing. The others were dumbstruck when they saw him kill the elders, and then Naruto turned his attention to the civilians who were whimpering in fear. "Oh please, you weaklings aren't even worth killing," he said, and heard a sigh of relief from them. "Because that honor is going to the Sandaime," he finished, and now it was Hiruzen's turn to grin in a way that would scare Orochimaru. He snapped his fingers and Anbu surrounded the civilians. "Arrest the civilians and prepare them for their execution tomorrow," Sarutobi ordered. Some of the civilians tried to run away only to be knocked out and dragged away, kicking and screaming they were innocent. After that little scene, Hiruzen sighs. "Now that they're gone, the Jonin may leave to continue their work while I explain everything to the clan heads." After the meeting, Naruto was approached by Kushina, Natsume, Anko, Kurenai, and Yugao, who heard from her two best friends that Naruto was the one who saved Kurenai from being raped a few years back. "Hello ladies. I'm pretty sure you all want an explanation, correct?" he asked and got a nod from them. "Very well then, grab onto my arms and I'll send us to the Namikaze estates." The five did so, and the next thing they knew, they suddenly vanished into thin air. Namikaze estates. They suddenly appeared in front of a large gate that had a seal placed on the lock, and behind it was a two-story mansion. The females blinked in confusion and looked back at Naruto, who bit his thumb and pressed it on the seal, which glowed white, and a light blue dome appeared around the mansion, and then the gate opened up automatically. Naruto motioned for them to follow him towards the mansion, which they did and entered the building. A few hours later, the group found themselves walking through an underground tunnel that was barely lit, and Kushina was wondering what this place was since she has never seen these tunnels underneath the Namikaze estate when she was living with Minato. "Oh no, Naruto, where does this place lead to?" Kushina asked th former blonde, who looked over his shoulder and smirks. "This place leads to a top secret area that dad kept locked away until I found this place by coincidence when I was 5. He answered until they came across a large metal double door. Naruto motioned for them to stop, which they did while he approached what appeared to be a code box and started to press a few numbers. Afterwards, the device blinked green and a small snake-like device moved towards his face and then paused. The top piece blinked blue and a scanner scanned his eyes for a few seconds and then retreated back into the code box. "Eye scan complete. Welcome Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze to the underground Saiyan facility," said a computerized voice that startled the Kunoichi as they heard the voice around them. Naruto saw this and chuckled since he also acted the same way when he found this place while the doors slowly opened. Once it fully opened, a glowing red light appeared in the dark entrance and made its way towards the group. It exited out of the shadows and appeared to be a small droid hovering in the air. Kushina, Natsume, Anko, Kurenai and Yugao jumped back when they saw it and were on edge. "What in Kami's name is that thing?" Anko asked. "Greetings, Master Naruto. It's been a while since you've been down here," the droid stated while Naruto rubbed the back of his head and smiled. "Indeed it has. I've been preoccupied for the last few years," the Saiyan stated while the droid beeped. "I see, and the female and engine behind you are your guests, correct?" it asked, and Naruto nodded while it analyzed their strength level with its built-in scanner. "How interesting. They are very strong despite their status as Terrans. Am I to believe that they'll be your mates, Master?" the droid asked, which caused Naruto to face fault and for the females behind him to blush at the proclamation while Akemi, Fem. Kyuubi was laughing her ass off in his mindscape. He stood back up and glared at the droid. "Now's not the time for that," he said in an annoyed tone. "So is the project close to being finished yet?" The droid beeped a few times and then answered. "Yes, Master, the project should be done in less than a month and fully operational to be used after a simulation run," it answered, and Naruto had a pleased look on his face. "That's good to hear," he said and looked back at the group of Kunoichi. "Come on, follow me," he instructed, and they did, following behind him while the door closed. As they walked through the tunnel they saw a flash of different colored screens flashing simultaneously and saw a few droids hovering around and doing maintenance on the different rooms' machines. That was when they stopped in front of a door which hissed opened and Naruto entered the room and they did the same. The room was well lavished, having 2 large couch sets as well as a few tropical plants that were in flower pots. There also appeared to be a large computer screen in the room, as well as a keyboard with several different switches and buttons. They each took a seat on the couches while Naruto was doing a set of one-handed seals until he stopped at the ram seal and reddish chakra-like flames and seals with the kanjis for the 5 main elements, fire, water, earth, lightning, and wind formed on his fingertips. He then grabbed the hem of his shirt and lifted it, revealing his six-pack which made the females blush at the sight until they saw the Shiki Fuin seal form around his torso and then slams his fingers into the seal and he grunts in pain and twists his hand. "Naruto, stop, what are you doing?" Kushina cried out frantically and got off the couch, attempting to help him until he placed a hand in front of her, telling her not to help him. The seal on his stomach glowed white and as he pulled his hand out, in his grasp was a reddish-orange blob of chakra that was being pulled out of his body and then tossed a crimson chakra-covered figure out of his body onto the floor. When the demonic chakra died down, it revealed a crimson-haired girl in her late teens, wearing a black kimono with red high-heel sandals and on top of her head was a pair of fox ears and 9 swing red tails. She was Akemi, the Kyuubi no Kitsune. She groaned and shook the cobwebs out of her head while the other females tensed up as she set her sights on the group and blinked a few times. "Hi," she said, waving at the group of women who suddenly got into their fighting stances until Naruto appeared between them. "Well, now settle down, ladies," Naruto said. "But Naruto, she's the reason why," Kurenai started to say. "Before you jump to conclusions, little girl, I'll have you know I never had any intention of attacking this mud hole called a village. I was forced to attack the village on the day Naruto-kun was born," Akemi said, getting looks of disbelief from them. "Look, whether you believe me or not is your choice. The only thing I care about is helping Naruto-kun," she finished. They were still skeptic until Naruto spoke up. "Alright, now everyone calm down. I said I would explain everything when we got here, now settle down," he said in a tone that left no form of arguing, so they each sat back down but kept their eyes on Akemi. "Okay, to start things off, I'm gonna show you all 2 cents final wish." Naruto started typing on the control panel and that was when the lights dimmed a little. That was when a hologram of Minato Namikaze appeared before them and they all gasped. Minato, Kushina said with awe in her voice. "D2-san." Natsume replied while the others remained stumped at what they saw. The hologram smiled and started to speak up. "Hello, Naruto. If you have activated this memory log, then that means you have found Kushina-chan and Natsumi-chan. Therefore I can start explaining things to you too and are wondering why Naruto's appearance has changed. To put it simply, his appearance changed because he and I aren't humans, even though our appearance is similar to the race. We are actually aliens, foreign beings born on a different planet. I came from a planet of alien warriors who were known as Saiyans." The entire room blacked out for a few seconds and it lit up again. They found themselves surrounded by a midnight blue background as well as different colored stars. "Whoa," was all Anko said while the rest were awestruck. "What you see before you is what is known as the universe, which consists of different types of solar systems, stars, and planets that harbor different races who have evolved and found ways to create advanced technology using their home world's natural resources and meeting other races and trading with them to build alliances." Minato explained to them all and aimed his attention to a holographic planet that enlarged a little in front of them. "This is the planet I was born on, called Planet Vegeta, in honor of the Saiyans' ruler King Vegeta I. Little history is known about this planet, but from what I dug up on my homeworld, the original name of the planet was known as Planet Plant, which was home to another advanced race who were known as Tuffles. The Tuffles had used their technological skills to construct and live in great cities. The Saiyans, on the other hand, lived in small primitive villages in the outskirts and badlands of Plant. Although they shared the same planet, the 2 races rarely confronted each other and stayed relatively peaceful for many years. However, after a while, the Saiyans began to grow tired of living in filthy primitive villages. The image of a group of Tuffles and Saiyans appeared before them and revealed the lush, naturally resourced planet Plant and the Badlands. After that they saw burning buildings and the sounds of screaming and battle cries were heard and they saw the Saiyans terrorize the civilians. Led by the command of King Vegeta, the Saiyans used their great power and brute strength and attacked the Tuffles. Although physically the Tuffles were much weaker and smaller than the Saiyans, they had advanced weaponry and technologies at their disposal. As the war waged on, both the Saiyans and the Tuffles each won their fair share of battles and for the next 10 years, the horrible war waged on. Kyuubi frowned at the sight that was displayed and the others were horrified at the battle they were watching. As the war continued with no end in sight, something occurred that brought the conflict to a quick and violent end. a full moon appeared on planet Plant and the Saiyans transformed into what is known as a great apes. The scene revealed a full moon, and when a group of gazed onto it, they became more feral and primal and growing, until they formed into giant ape-like creatures that were the size of a biju, and they were roaring and beating on their chests. This transformation greatly increased their power, and within a few short hours, they completely annihilated the Tuffles from the face of the planet, thus ending the war. The Saiyans then claimed the planet as their own, and it was renamed Planet Vegeta, after their great leader who had led them to victory. The next scene showed the Tuffles firing at the apes with odd weapons that fired energy blasts, until the Saiyans fired large energy blasts at the buildings and people causing large explosions. Over the next few years, the Saiyans began rebuilding and constructing their empire, and not too long after, they met the galactic dictator Frieza, who then annexed the planet and forcefully drafted all Saiyans into his army. After seeing the Saiyans' will to fight and their great power, he made them his official pirates and had them take over entire planets so that they could be sold to the highest bidder. Due to the Saiyans' innate strength and penchant for violence, they were considered to be useful mercenaries and assisted in the conquering of many planets, or if assigned eradicate the planet's population, and even Saiyan children were considered powerful enough to conquer some of the weaker planets, such as Earth. Eventually, seeing how quickly some of the more gifted Saiyan warriors were gaining power through battle, Frieza grew concerned with the potential of the Saiyan race and thought that they would grow strong enough to face him or even become the fabled Super Saiyans, able to defeat him in battle. So with one devastating attack, Frieza blew up Planet Vegeta and wiped out the Saiyans. The appearance of an alien-like being in strange armor was hovering over the planet in an odd and cackling like a madman as he held an index finger up and formed a large ball of yellowish-orange energy that was the size of a moon and flung it at the planet. When it collided, it caused a chain reaction that ruptured the planet's core and exploded. The women were now terrified at how that monster was able to easily wipe out a planet with one attack and wipe out a whole race. Only 5 pure-blood Saiyans survived the destruction. They were Kakarot, Goku, Vegeta, Nappa, Raditz, and finally me, as we were not on the planet at the time. Now here is where I explain my birth. Apparently my side of the family was the descendants of a Saiyan who was the legendary Super Saiyan, and during his time he was known as the greatest warrior in the universe that ever lived, and he had no equal. That was when the form of a shadowed warrior with a yellow outline and red eyes. He was considered to be a myth amongst our race and an idol our kin who wanted to gain the power he possessed, but he was too primitive to control it, and his rage burned so intensely that it eventually consumed him. In the end, he was destroyed by his own power. He finished as the Saiyan let out a primal roar and the planet it was on self-destructed. We managed to find a way to suppress our power levels and were elites, but in the end, my family also perished with the world we lived in. I arrived on Elementia in my spaceship and was found out by the Sandame, and the rest is history. As for our Saiyan abilities, we got stronger every time we fought, either from coming out victorious or out of a battle near death, where we become twice as strong from every battle till the point where we can reach levels only I have reached. As far as I know, I gained a form known as the Super Saiyan form, and that's where I get my golden hair from. The reason why I stayed in my Super Saiyan form was due to my training. The longer I stayed in the form, the longer I could fight in it, till the point I could go through a week walking in the form without getting winded. But I'm getting off track. What I'm saying is this: when Naruto was born, my Saiyan blood erased the human genes due to how strong the Saiyan genes from my side of the family were, which turned him into a full Saiyan. For Natsume, however, I don't know what would happen, since the male gene is more or less dormant than the female gene of the Saiyan ace, so she's more than likely to gain some of the abilities until she was able to fully awaken her dormant blood. Minato explained. Unfortunately my time is now up, so Naruto, if you do find your mother and sister, take them away from this planet and to another cold Earth where Kakarot resides, and if you want, take a few others who you care about deeply. Also to Kushina and Naruto, should this be my last time speaking, I want you both to know that I love you both with all my heart and you are my entire world. Until we meet in the afterlife, live life to the fullest. He finished with a grin on his face, and then the hologram blinked out of existence and the room lit up again. Naruto got out of his chair and stood up and watched as Kushina and Natsumi were sobbing quietly to themselves. Anko, Kurenai, and Yugao attempted to comfort them, but they too had tears falling from their faces. Naruto walked over to them, sat between them and pulled the two Redeeds into a one-arm hug and let them cry on his shoulders. After that little scene, they both wiped their tears away. Now then, do any of you have any questions regarding what you've learned? Naruto asked them. That was when Natsumi spoke up. Yeah, I have a question. Toussaint said that I also carried the Saiyan gene in my body too, but said it was dormant. So why don't I have a tail like you do? She asked with confusion on her face. Naruto pondered on this and then spoke up. Like Dad said, you more than likely gained a few abilities, even though your Saiyan DNA is still dormant and needs some type of jumpstart. The abilities you more than likely gained is enhanced senses and your speed, strength, stamina, and reflexes increasing a little, as well as recovering faster and taking hits most people can't. He explained. So that's it. I always wondered why Natsumi-chan was able to recover so quickly. Kushina stated. That was when Anko spoke up. I have a question. How were you able to float in the air during the prelims? The energy I sensed from you wasn't similar to chakra, only it was stronger. She asked. That energy I used is called Kai. Not to be mistaken for killer intent. Kai is also known as latent energy or fighting power and is also known as Kai, which directly translates as life force. This force is a tangible energy that resides inside of a living being and its major focus being in the center of the body. By drawing it out, a person is able to manipulate it and use it for performances outside the body. Usually the more concentrated the masses are, the more time the user requires to draw it out to power up. When a person gathers Kai, he or she is able to gain enhanced strength, speed, endurance, and can increase the power of their attacks to inflict greater damage to opponents. He explained. It's a lot easier to control chakra and like chakra anyone can draw it out. Also that floating technique is called BUKUJUTSU flight technique. It's a technique used by the person who manipulates their Kai into a form of levitation or flight. It took me a while to get that technique done, and I've got the bumps to prove it. He said, rubbing the side of his head as emphasis while Akemi giggled, remembering how many times he crash landed or hit a tree or cliff. Can this Kai be obtained by anyone? Yugao asked and Naruto nodded. Yes, anyone can activate their Kai even though it will take a while to do so. He answered. That was when a droid floated over to Naruto. Master, we just finished performing a scan on the ninja you found in Danzo's lair. Apparently she has been put into a drug-induced coma for the last 8 years and her body given nourishment through IV needles during that time. Her vital signs are normal, but she won't wake up from the coma for a few days. The droid explained. I see. And the transfusion? Naruto asked the droid who blinked a few times. It was a success, Master. It should take long for the alterations to be complete. It finished and then hovered away, leaving the others confused. What was that thing talking about? Kurenai asked Naruto, who got up and had a grim expression on her face. Before I leveled that Warhawk's lair, I found someone who supposedly died during a certain massacre. Follow me to the recovery room and you'll find out who I'm talking about. The former blonde made his way out of the room being followed by the others. They each knew of the Uchiha clan massacre that Itachi Uchiha committed and wondered what he meant by someone disappearing during the event. Was there a survivor, they wondered. Naruto made his way towards a pair of slide door that had the kanji for recovery room on it. He along with the females entered the room and saw there were what appeared to be recovery tanks, medical supplies and equipment, along with other droids roaming the place. Naruto made his way towards the largest tank in the room. Inside the cylindrical tank floating in the green liquid was what appeared to be a female with fair skin and waist-length black hair with her eyes closed and was in the fetal position, with her arms hugging her legs together to her naked body and dangling from her rear was what appeared to be a monkey-like tail like the one Naruto had. On there was a panel that read her vital signs and attached to her mouth was what appeared to be a breathing apparatus attached to a cable that was connected to a built-in oxygen tank. Itsumi, Anko, Kurenai and Yugao were wondering who this female was in the tank and that was when Kushina gasped. Oh my kami, that's Mikoto. The redeed said, which caused the others' eyes to widen and look closely into the tank. I thought she was killed during the massacre. Kurenai stated and Naruto shook his head. No. Itachi knocked her out after Fugaku attempted to kill her to gain the Manjikyu Sharingan like his son did. Danzo must have had his agent swoop in and snatch her up afterwards and was probably trying to find a way to breed Uchihas under his control. Naruto said darkly and was wishing he had kept the old fool alive and make him suffer for what he did. That's terrible. Natsumi said with a disgusted look on her face. Now I see why the Yondaime wanted to take you two away from this place. Kami knows what would have happened if he got his hands on you two. Yugao stated, which made them shiver at the thought. No need to think about that. The man and his cronies are dead. When I found her, she looked so weak and pale, so while I went to the council chamber, I had a clone take her back here and put her through a transfusion with my Saiyan blood which I kept and stored. He replied as they saw the tail swish around in the tank. So what did your blood do? Kurenai asked. As of right now it's strengthening her body and altering her DNA. She won't be an Uchiha no more once the assimilation is complete. Naruto answered. Anko on the other hand was walking around the place and then stared at one of the droids in a curious manner. She crouched down and tapped it a few times only to get zapped and yelp out in pain. Naruto saw this and chuckled. Careful, those little droids can be hostile if harassed, Anko-chan. Naruto warned while she glared at the bot who just blinked and went on with its business. Kurenai and Yugao giggled seeing their friend get bested by something so small. Itsumi kept looking at the tail and then back at Naruto's that swished behind him simultaneously and was inwardly screaming kawaii and was wishing she had a tail too. She reached out for it and gently stroked the fur. Naruto felt a jolt go up his spine and a purr escaped his lips which got the other female's attention and they saw Natsumi stroking his tail. The teenage Saiyan snapped out of his stupor and wrapped his tail around his waist. "Please try to refrain from touching my tail, Natsumi-chan. I know it's cute but it's really sensitive," he requested while she blushed and rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. Akemi on the other hand was plotting blackmail against her former container. "Oh no, Naruto." Kushina spoke up getting his attention. "When Minato-kun said that your Saiyan blood erased the human DNA from your body due to how strong his genes were, does that mean we're no longer related?" She asked with a hint of sadness in her voice which he caught sadly nodded. "I'm afraid so. If we were to do a blood test, all traces of your clan's bloodline or traits would not be found in it," he answered which made her look glum. "And I hate to say this, but I'll never know the love of a mother, but I know it wasn't your fault that I was alone most of my life because those teams took advantage over you in your weakened state of when you lost Tucson. If anything I would like for us to start off as friends and possibly more once we get to know each other. I'm pretty sure Dad won't mind," he said. Akemi grinned while Kushina's, Natsumi, Anko, Yugao's, and Kurenai's eyes bugged out. "Anyhow I do know of a way for you to become full-fledged Saiyans like me," he stated which got their attention until Kurenai looked skeptic. "And if you're wondering you don't have to strip naked and stay in a tank, Kurenai-chan," he teased which made the red-eyed Kunoichi's face become the color of an apple and sputtered while the other snickered. "I have another way to do that by having you go through a blood ritual. I learned how to do this through some of Dad's blueprints that involves my blood and Fuinjutsu." He then saw them think about it and spoke up once again. "It's your decision whether or not you want to go through with this. The same with you three," Naruto said looking at Anko, Kurenai and Yugao. "Akemi on the other hand is the strongest demon from the Makai realm, so I highly doubt that she would want to become a Saiyan." "Got that right. I don't want to lose my beautiful tails," she said hugging her tails to her body and snuggling against the swaying appendages which made the others' sweat drop. "Okay," Naruto said dryly. That was when Itsumi's stomach growled out loud and the others looked at the blushing girl. "Haha, sorry, all of these explanations made me hungry," she apologized while smiling and rubbing the back of her head. "No worries, Natsumi-chan. We'll head back up to the compound and eat and afterwards we'll talk about what you all want to do from this point on," Naruto replied getting a nod from them. "First I need to check on the progress of the ship that's being built. Be back in a flash," he said and shimmered out of the room. "So what do you think, Natsumi-chan? Are you up for it?" Kushina asked her daughter who pondered on this for a while but smiled. "You bet. I think being a Saiyan would seem alright. I especially love the tail, it's just so cute," the young Redeed said grinning as did Anko. "I'll say. That tail makes him look feral but sexy, right, Kurenai?" Anko nudged her best friend who nodded with a blush on her face. "Say you've been quiet ever since you laid eyes on your savior. Has he captured the heart of Konoha's Ice Queen?" she teased. "Shut up," she muttered folding her arms under his chest. "Hey, I don't blame you. He is hot for his age. I wonder what he looks like with his shirt off." Anko asked herself with a perverted grin on her face. "Anko?" Kurenai cried out while steam escaped from her ears. Akemi on the other hand was giggling while Yugao placed her palm over her face and muttering how she ended up in this situation. And cut. Okay folks, here's the next chapter. I bet you were all surprised to find Makoto still being alive, huh? Also if you're all wondering, here are the females that will be in the final harem. What if Naruto becomes Saiyan for Chunin exams, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys next video.